Hi, I'm Lewis, also known as Skeffles, and welcome to my 18th devlog for my tower defense game, Project Torrim. Last week I fixed a big bug with my collision code and introduced an enemy spawning system. Throughout that week, I came across quite a lot of usability issues with the UI and my towers that frustrated me. As such, for this week, I've prioritised my tower usability issues and bugs. Looking at the task list, there are quite a lot of tasks. I want to complete as many as possible this week to really solidify the gameplay and put my future focus on content. So let's kick off this development week. Okay, I've managed to get many UI usability issues sorted. These are all fairly horrible usability issues, some of which I was aware of, but others were pointed out by Mark Viola 2 devlogs ago. Thank you, Mark. The first of these issues I worked on was the layer drawing issue. Watching back on all my devlogs, this issue has been around for a long time, causing world space objects to often appear on top of UI. This was caused by me trying to be clever when I first created layers and sprites. In monogame, a sprite can be drawn at any depth between 0 and 1, with higher depth sprites appearing above the lower depth ones. When I added layers, each layer would have a depth associated with it, and drawable items such as sprites would set their depth based on their layer depth. This was to avoid having lots of sprite batches, but it caused these graphical issues. Since I created that system, I realised having multiple sprite batches isn't a huge performance hit I was once worried about. As such, I fixed this issue by making sure each layer uses its own sprite batch. This makes much more sense, and as long as the layers have their draw functions called in the right order, this won't cause any strange rendering. The next UI issue was with spawning towers and the tower management menu, both of which were happening in world space and not the UI space. This meant that any spawn tower was always being spawned on the left side of the map, and the tower management menu was always on the right. Fixing these were fairly straightforward. The tower management menu was being placed on the game world layer, so I changed that to be the UI layer. And the tower was being spawned in the game world at the UI cursor position, so I changed it to use the game world cursor position. The last UI issue I worked on was to improve the readability of the score text. I did this by simply moving it into a rectangle at the top left corner of the screen. This isn't fancy, but it's so much nicer than before, really making it easier to read what score you have. It's really fantastic to get all these UI issues sorted out. Next, there are a number of tower usability issues that I want to work on, which I'll take you over once I'm done with them. It's now Wednesday, and I've managed to get through quite a few tasks. The first of these was to only show a radius around the currently active tower. Doing this has really reduced the amount of clutter on the screen and makes it obvious which tower you've currently selected. Whilst working on this, I came across some strange behaviours in which multiple towers were active at once. The reason for this was each tower had its own tower management component, meaning it was possible for multiple tower managers to be active at the same time. To fix this, I looked into how singleton patterns worked. Unfortunately, the way that my game objects are set up, I don't think a true singleton would work. However, I can create a similar single pattern in which there's only one instance of a tower manager in the game. This means the tower manager will always look at the currently active tower, and it's impossible for multiple towers to be active together. As I worked on these changes, I realised that the move button in the tower management menu was now unnecessary. As such, I removed it and changed the background colour of the menu to help distinguish it from the tower buying area. All these changes really come together to improve the flow of managing towers, which I'm really pleased with. At this point, there are just a few issues left on the Trello board, so I'm really going to push to try and finish them, and I'll catch up one more time before I wrap up for this week. I've just finished the last task in the tower usability task list. I wasn't too sure if I'd finished the list this week, so I'm really happy with my progress. The very last tasks I worked on were for 2 tower spawning issues and a menu closing issue. The first tower spawning issue was that when you spawned a tower over an invalid area, it would still be placed down in the invalid area. To fix this, I ensured that any newly spawned towers were always dragging, whether you tapped or held the mouse button. This means the player has to move a newly spawned tower into a valid area before it can be used. The second tower spawning issue was that when you spawned a tower and kept clicking, the world camera would also drag with the tower. This caused the tower to hover in place and was quite awkward to get the tower into a valid position. To fix this, I made a change to all of my buttons, so if they've been clicked, the camera will cancel its drag function. This means clicking the spawn button cancels any camera dragging. The final issue I looked at was to improve the points at which menus would close. I had originally envisioned whenever you clicked away from them, they would close. However, with the rest of the changes from this week, I wasn't sure if that was the right call. So I took some time playing about and deciding how this should work. I decided to make the way you open a menu also be the way you can close it. This was easy for the tower buying menu, as a tower buying button could simply check if it was already open and then close itself. Unfortunately, this wasn't as straightforward for the tower management menu, because towers do more than just open the menu. When you click on a tower, the active tower changes, the tower management menu opens, and the drag component on the tower activates. The main source of pain on this was the drag component, and they ended up with some weird behaviours such as finishing a drag will cause the menu to close, and active towers being unable to move. In the end, I came up with a nifty solution to this issue. When a tower is clicked, it will set a flag which indicates it wants to be deselected. If this flag is set and the dragging component is not currently being dragged, the tower will deselect itself based on how long the last drag took. This means dragging a tower for a prolonged period keeps the tower active, and giving it a quick tap will close the menu. There is an odd quirk with this though. If you quickly drag a tower over an invalid area, then it will close the menu but still be dragged. This doesn't really concern me though, because the tower can easily be placed into a valid area and work like normal. This week has seen some absolutely fantastic progress on Project Torrim. It really feels much better to play now, and I'm dead excited to move on to developing more content. I hope you enjoyed watching this devlog. Leave the video a like to let me know you are. Comment to give any feedback, I would love to see what you're thinking about this game. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all the progress on the game. Thank you, and goodbye.